The Consumer Council finds some contracts signed by physical fitness customers will only end in 2050. Typhoon Babinka expected to make landfall in East China tomorrow morning. And in the Middle East, a Houthi missile reaches central Israel for the first time. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. The Consumer Council found that at least 30 customers signed new contracts with Physical 3 days before the gym chain announced its closure. Some contracts will only end in 2050. Speaking with TVB News, Gilly Wang, the Watchdog CEO, warned that even though the new investor said it would take over Physical's customers, it might not be able to offer the same services promised in the contracts. Following the closure of Physical, a new investor reopens the Wanchai branch of the fitness chain under a new brand name, Healthy. The investor promised to continue services for Physical customers, but they have to sign a consent form first. Speaking on a TVB program, Consumer Council CEO Gilly Wang said, with no time limit for filling in the form, the council suggests that customers observe a bit more now.
You can wait and see for a little while, waiting for them to provide more information about how they what is the relationship behind, in this, we call it changeover? Is it a partnership? Is it a really, switching of client or whatever? I think, we need more information, to understand that, because the legal implication behind means a lot to consumers.
Another reason, confusing terms in the form.
There are some terms a little bit confusing to consumers. The title of it is an application form. It seems like they're requesting the consumers to apply for their club membership. But on the other hand, they said they are not responsible for the existing merchant services or any personal training.
Gilly Wang said the Consumer Council had received upwards of 3,000 related complaints. 30 to 40 customers signed new contracts with Physical 1 to 3 days before the gym chain closed down. One of them paid $360,000. 172 cases involved customers aged 65 or above. The most expensive prepaid package costs over $1.5 million. Some contracts will only expire in 2050.
If you ask me, is this a high-pressure selling? No, it is more about, being credulous and suggestible.
This as some clients forked out money so their salespersons can receive the gym chain special commission. Wang added the government can also review whether there's a need to step up legislation of a cooling down period for such contracts. And Secretary for Labor and Welfare Chris Sun today says the Labor Department has so far received 670 help requests from physical fitness employees over issues including unpaid wages.
They are all eligible to apply for protection of wage and insolvency fund. Right now, our colleagues in the Labor Department, also together with members of the labor unions, we are trying our very best to persuade the employer of the physical health, physical fitness, to sign a statement declaring that they are unable to pay. So if this statement can be signed, it will speed up the whole process.
Sun has reminded the affected employees who consider signing a contract with a new gym, Healthy, which operates at the former physical fitness branch in Wanchai, to read the terms and conditions carefully. Typhoon Babinka is set to make landfall tomorrow morning between Pinghu in Zhejiang and Pudong in Shanghai. Babinka is expected to be the strongest typhoon to pound Shanghai in 75 years. Heavy rain in Shanghai today with the approach of Babinka. Tourist attractions, including those on the seaside and Shanghai Disneyland, closed earlier than usual. Bracing for Babinka, a few hundred flights have been cancelled at Shanghai's Pudong Airport and Hongqiao Airport. In Zhoushan in Zhejiang province, more than 2,000 merchant ships have sought safety at port. Apart from Zhejiang and Shanghai, the southern part of Jiangsu province have also activated the top-level emergency response as Babinka moves closer to the region. The China Coast Guard said today a Philippine vessel withdrew from a contested shore in the South China Sea. Manila said it is sending another vessel to replace the Teresa Magbanua, which has completed its 5-month mission. Officials from China and the Philippines recently held talks on South China Sea issues, in particular over a disputed reef that has been the scene of clashes. China refers to the area as Xianbin Reef, around 150 kilometers west of Palawan province. The 97-meter Philippine vessel had anchored in the disputed water since April. A spokesperson for China's Coast Guard says the Philippine side action have seriously infringed on China's territorial sovereignty. Teresa Magbanua was deployed there to monitor what Manila suspects to be China's small-scale land reclamation activities in the area. Manila and Beijing have traded accusations of intentional ramming of each other's vessel last month. A missile fired from Yemen landed in open space in Israel. Loud booms were heard as air raid sirens rang out in Tel Aviv. A small fire broke out, but there were no reports of injuries. The Israeli military said the explosion was caused by interceptors, but the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen claimed their weapon breached Israeli air defense systems, although it failed to hit its intended target. David Garrett with more.
It looks like a forest fire, but Israel say this was caused by a missile fired from Yemen. Flames leap into the early morning sky as people keep their distance. The rocket struck an unpopulated area about 6 kilometres from Ben Gurion Airport outside Tel Aviv. Services were briefly disrupted. Responders went quickly to tackle the blaze and investigate. The Israeli Defense Forces say interceptors caused the explosion and fire that scorched an area of ground. There were no injuries from the strike, but 5 were reported hurt running to bomb shelters. Footage shot from the city of Modin shows the proximity of residents to the downed missile. At his cabinet meeting, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who will attend the UN General Assembly this month, said Israel is fighting a multi-front battle and Yemen can expect to pay a heavy price. The Houthis in Yemen claim a new hypersonic missile evaded Israeli defences. The Iran-backed group's military spokesman said they were aiming at an Israeli military target in Jaffa. Yahya Sari says the projectile covered over 2,000 kilometres in less than 12 minutes. A drone attack by the Houthis killed a man in July. The Houthis have vowed to keep up attacks on Israel while the war with Hamas in Gaza continues. As the conflict enters its 12th month, there is still no sign of a ceasefire. The United Arab Emirates has said it will not consider a peace plan that does not recognise a Palestinian state, and other countries in the Middle East agree.
Under the present circumstances, with Mr. Netanyahu and his government saying that they are not going to recognize a Palestinian state, the kingdom is not going to recognize Israel. The establishment of a Palestinian state is a prerequisite for any normalization, not just between Saudi Arabia and Israel, but other countries as well that still don't recognize Israel.
David Garrett, TVB News.
Iran's latest satellite launch is likely to further anger Western countries. The U.S. did not comment directly but condemned previous launches that defied the UN Security Council resolution and helped Iran advance its ballistic missile program. Iranian state media described the satellite launch as a success. It is the country's second satellite put into orbit with a Cam-100 rocket. Ukraine has made a new call on the West to allow it to strike deeper into Russia with long-range weapons. This after a meeting between U.S. and British leaders a day earlier produced no visible shift in their policy. Meanwhile, the latest prisoner swap between Ukraine and Russia saw 206 soldiers return home. Nasmi Karim with more.
These Russian soldiers boarding a bus were captured by Ukrainian forces around a month ago during Kyiv's Kursk incursion. Now they're going home. I didn't expect that I would come back, said this soldier. Too many emotions. I don't know how to put it. He is one of 103 Russian prisoners of war being swapped for 103 Ukrainian soldiers captured during the early months of the war in 2022. The deal was brokered by the United Arab Emirates, the 8th time the Gulf country has arranged a prisoner swap this year, and the 57th such exchange between Russia and Ukraine since war broke out. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky praised those who helped bring their soldiers home. Among the soldiers, he said, were members of the Azov Brigade, who spent 3 months defending the port city of Mariupol. Zelensky, meanwhile, is continuing his campaign for permission to use Western-supplied long-range weapons to attack deep inside Russia. He held talks with the foreign ministers of Poland and Lithuania in Kiev during the Yalta European Strategy Conference. He thanked them both for their country's military support and talked about potential long-range capabilities.
How are you doing? Oh, it's good to see you.
Zelensky also met former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, one of several politicians from Britain urging their government to give the green light for Storm Shadow missiles to hit Russia. Prime Minister Keir Starmer and US President Joe Biden met on Friday in Washington to discuss the issue. Russia says any move to allow Kiev to use long-range weapons would effectively drag the US and its allies into the war. On the battlefield, Ukraine said 7 people have died after Russian drone and artillery strikes on various cities. Ukrainian officials say 76 Russian drones were spotted and 72 were shot down. Russia said it brought down around 29 drones over Kursk, where Moscow says its forces are recapturing some areas initially taken by Kiev. Nazri Karim, TVB News.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer may have breached parliamentary rules by not disclosing that a rich party donor bought expensive clothes for his wife. The Sunday Times says Starmer faces an investigation after Lord Wahid Ali covered the expenses of Victoria Starmer's personal shopper. Other donations from the Labour peer were listed, but the paper says the clothes were not disclosed. UK MPs must provide financial interests, which could influence their work. A statement by Downing Street said, "We believed we have been compliant. However, following further interrogation this month, we have declared further items." And still ahead, the public urged to wear gloves when handling aquatic products after a rise in cases of invasive Group B streptococcus. And pictures of Mid-Autumn Festival lanterns around town. Welcome back. The Center for Health Protection says there has been a recent rise in hospitalization numbers involving invasive Group B streptococcus, a potentially deadly bacteria often spread through contact with raw freshwater fish. Health authorities have urged residents to take hygiene precautions when handling raw seafood.
Fishmongers handling fish with bare hands. Some buyers touch the fish when checking the quality of aquatic products. This patron says she will go back to wash her hands after touching the fish, and she's afraid of getting infected too. This man says he will be more careful if he has a wound. There has been a rise in the hospitalization number due to invasive Group B streptococcus this year. Between the beginning of August and September 11th, 27 people were affected with the bacteria. 2 of them died. The Center for Health Protection, or CHP, says none of the 27 patients sell fish or work in fish farming industries. But most cases came into contact with freshwater fish before the onset of symptoms. They visited 14 wet markets across 7 districts. The CHP believes some fish might have been infected at a wholesale level, so it's not ruling out that more markets are affected. It says authorities have stepped up disinfection work and are closely monitoring the health of market staff. The CHP reminds residents to wear gloves when handling aquatic products and seek medical advice when symptoms such as wound inflammation or fever develop.
Dr.
Joseph Zhang, who co-chairs the Medical Association's Advisory Committee on Communicable Disease, warns that even the water in the fish tanks could carry the bacteria, so fishmongers should avoid direct contact with the raw seafood. Last year and in 2021, the city also experienced outbreaks of the invasive Group B streptococcus. Both happened in the months of September and October. Dr. Zhang said if the pattern persists over the summer, authorities should consider incorporating the bacterial infection into their notification mechanism.
This year's Mid-Autumn Festival falls on Tuesday. Some citizens celebrated it early this weekend with family gatherings and dinner. They include this family of around 20 members who spent around $12,000 for this Mid-Autumn feast. This tea house in Lak Fu is fully booked for dinner over the Mid-Autumn Festival. But this manager said most patrons opted for cheaper dinner sets, given the current economic situation. Meanwhile, this shop, selling traditional mooncakes, said purchases from local customers have dropped 20% year-on-year. Both mainland and Southeast Asian tourists have helped buoy business. Shenzhen authorities, meanwhile, are expecting the number of daily cross-boundary travelers to be around 760,000 over the three-day Mid-Autumn Festival holiday. The travel rush is anticipated to peak on Tuesday. More than 6,000 residents suspected of having dementia have been subject to testing since December last year. 30% of participants required cognitive follow-up. Mo Sang-ai reports.
In Hong Kong, 23% of the population is 65 years of age or older. The chance of being diagnosed with dementia is a concern to many people as they age. The Jockey Club Centre for Positive Aging, the Faculty of Medicine of CUHK, and 7 other organizations introduced a brain health dementia screening and community support project last year. This afternoon, a launch ceremony was held for the program, with Secretary for Labour and Welfare Chris Sun as an officiating guest. The project will run until November 2026, hoping to help residents suspected of dementia receive early diagnosis. Since December last year, 6,339 residents took part in the EC Screen, an app developed by CUHK that offers a preliminary assessment of the disease in 15 minutes. More than 5,500 of those tested were aged 60 or older. Among them, 33.2% need further cognitive follow-up. Individuals who require a follow-up in the all-participant category was 30.4%. They will then be referred to partnered organizations or primary care doctors for support. Meanwhile, people aged 60 or above with a primary education or below required attention, compared to 24.4% of those who underwent secondary education. Only 13.8% of those tested with tertiary education or higher need relevant help.
We are born with very little in our brain. With time, we train our brain, to do a lot of things. So education is part of the growth of the brain. So as we learn things, as we go along in life, we build up a brain reserve. So, and if you have a lot more brain reserve, then it takes more of a disease to get you to the dementia state.
This is one of the many games through which people can test their cognitive ability. Kok urged members of the public to conduct the test if they are concerned about being diagnosed with dementia. News 9, TVB News.
More sports. A memorial service was held for former England manager Sven-Goran Eriksson at his small hometown of Torsby, Sweden. It immediately follows Eriksson's funeral at the 600-seat Fredrikshamn Church. After the funeral, Eriksson's casket was carried out of the church by 8 men to a hearse. Guests, including ex-England captain David Beckham and manager Roy Hodgson, then walked in a procession accompanying the casket to a nearby museum. Speeches and eulogies to the coach then took place on an outdoor stage. Eriksson died on August 26 at the age of 76 after suffering from pancreatic cancer.
The way he fought like a true champion in the last race. He truly...
Finally, with the Mid-Autumn Festival just around the corner, Hong Kong has been illuminated with lantern installations across multiple districts. Let's take a look. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.